Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. The WLCAC was founded in 1965, unfortunately burned down, but fortunately rebuilt after the LA Rebellion of 1992. The man who created the whole thing, Ted Watkins. Today, his son continues on with his mission with pride and passion and love. I'm delighted to be joined by Tim today. So great to have you here.
Thank you. Same here.
Obviously, this is incredibly personal, given the fact that your father was the person that created it in the first place. So what did you see as a young man with the LACAC and your father and the community and everything this place offers growing up?
I learned to find joy in a place of despair um, by learning to appreciate the remarkable hope that people have. That people that have so little in many cases, other than whatever they can glean from, government assistance and those kinds of support systems, that the community really has unlimited potential. We've been convinced to think we're poor, but the truth is we're rich with potential, with possibilities. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to evolve mature thinking about that, because there's a lot that goes into it.
Your father came literally to the West Coast, escaping, a horrible way of thinking, and came and realized that a community deserved attention and a community deserved hope and all of those things that you're referencing, and actually did a lot to help with labor and help with opportunities here in the Watts community. And now we are looking at a generation later. What are the needs of this community that are the same from when your father first came and created WLCAC, and now what you see that this community needs?
Well, so first of all, aside from a little documentary that was done by Ford Foundation on Ted's involvement in the formation and operation of WLCAC, there's very, very little that's been done to explore his genius.
Oh.
And my job, my promise to my mom was, when he passed away in 1993 and she was dying in 1994, on her deathbed, she asked me what was going to happen to his life work. Because I was involved in other pursuits. I was already making millions of dollars and was doing my own thing as a contractor. And I told her I'd do whatever I had to. And sure enough, in the first president that succeeded him, the second president of WLCAC, served for roughly 2 years. And then in the next election, he was replaced by my sister. And it got to a point where she just didn't have what it took to keep it going. And I was approached by board members and asked if I would step in. I reluctantly stepped in eventually, but I lost my personal wealth because when I stepped in, I wouldn't take a paycheck until I thought I knew what I was doing. Well, 2.5 years later, I still wasn't getting a paycheck. But it was taking that long for me to get an idea of what needed to be done. I've been in place now 25 years, almost, to the month. And along the way, I understood that my purpose is to extend his legacy.
Well, to begin with, happy anniversary.
Thank
That's
you.
pretty amazing. But also, what are some of the things that you are now able to offer the community? It seems the scope of programs that happen here are pretty robust. So what are some of the things that you're really excited about right now?
Oh, every day I can't wait to get to work. I live 4 minutes away from here down the street. I'm up and out, and I never know what I'm going to encounter. But we're still doing the same things that he started 60 years ago. Um, Services for the homeless, for seniors, for the indigent and economically, poor people, whatever kinds of needs they have, whether it's food or transportation or housing, we're in the business of finding solutions. And that's what we do. When he passed away, the focus was on the acquisition of housing and the development of more affordable housing. Um, Today, my focus and my personal passion goes to developing rent-to-own housing. It's a different take. A lot of people don't believe that it can be done, but he did it before with single-family units, single-family residences. It did hundreds of them. I want to do hundreds of them in a multifamily setting so that the people that we move into those units that will eventually own them are from the communities of greatest need, people that were formerly incarcerated or at war in a foreign land, or in some cases homeless by, accident. They fell, they hurt their hip, and in the process of healing, lost everything.
So how is that going to work? Are you purchasing properties that are, multifamily properties? I
No.
mean, how is your dream being realized?
So we call the project 2,000 watts
Okay,
to actually depict the number of units we're going to build.
okay.
2,000 units of very affordable housing with 20% rent to own. And so these 400 units will be scattered throughout the 2,000. But we are looking for a legal way to add a layer of specificity to the kind of people that we want to move in these units for people in great need. And that is that there's a group in America that's always been here before homelessness was pandemic. There were what America called starving artists. And so that's the fourth tier. We want all of these people to be artists. We want Watts to be a place where everywhere you turn, there's public art. There are artists putting on demonstrations, artists creating sculpted works, painting cars, painting houses, painting themselves as a magnet for cultural tourism. That we want people from around the world to come to this little community that burned down in 1965 and again in 1992, as if that were the pattern that it was destined to repeat, and prove that through hope and ingenuity, some of the most innovative people on earth are people that have nothing.
Your whole conceit about artists is fascinating to me. First of all, we're surrounded by breathtaking art in this room, but it's all over this complex. Everywhere
Yes.
you go, there's sculpture and there's painting and there's work. What do you think the artist brings to a community that actually directs you to want to have them in
It's
as
what the world needs now, to put it in Dionne Warwick and Burt Bacharach's words. It's what the world needs now. It's love, it's peace, it's passionate, constructive, peaceful communication. That every piece of art you have seen here, and you can't even see it all because it's so much of it that when you're looking at it sometimes, you don't realize, oops, that's another piece of somebody's artwork. That, the world's most powerful leaders are communicating through destruction and violence. And in communities like Watts, artists that would otherwise probably be worse off find a way to eke out an existence, even though they're part of a starving category, because there's a tolerance and acceptance for alternatives to war and violence and destruction. You know about our territorial rifts. The rest of the world outside of Watts calls, different factions of domestic groups, gangs. I refuse to refer to the young people that bond together to make it through every day. I call them domestic. They're like surrogate families. There may be no mother or father. There may not only be no mother or father, but maybe there's no grandparents or other siblings. And a kid is supposed to get up and fend for himself every day in a community that is struggling over crumbs. I look at people that live in our housing developments, and some of the people in my life that I believe have the greatest integrity and are most honest are living in deplorable conditions in public housing in Watts. And I say in Watts because if you go to Palos Verdes and you look at Harbor Hills, public housing, any of us would be proud to live there. It's beautiful, it's green, people are out walking their babies and their pups and so on. But here, it's almost as if we've got a group of people that the rest of the world thinks is dispensable. So when a kid kills another kid and you find out that it was over the difference in the color of their shoelaces, the world goes on. The news stops reporting it because it's just another gang-related homicide. But I've gone a step farther because I believe, and this, by the way, I won't take credit for this, it's an extension of my father's legacy, that when I was 9, 10 years old, he took me on a Sunday and showed me the railroad right-of-ways in Watts and how nothing was growing there. And he explained to me that they put solutions with heavy metals to kill the weeds and to make the soil sterile. But he went a step further because I wondered, well, how can you put heavy metal in a liquid? And he said it's chemically done. He said, but it doesn't sterilize the soil, it poisons it. And so then we started the conversation that was about, well, what effect does it have on the people that live across the street from it? And he and I didn't go any further with that, although he was somewhat of an environmentalist. This property, this building, was a source of great pollution prior to 1971 when we bought it. This property used to be a tire recycling plant and a machine company. And during the 1965 riots, great fire started, and the whole neighborhood got hyper-infested with rats that had been living in the tires. And so he put together a plan to buy the property, get rid of the tires, and create a community center, and that's what it is today. But on the environmental stewardship, what I found out is that the drinking water in the housing developments has a presence of lead. And even this morning, in a long meeting with the mayor and other heads of agencies, the conversation focused for quite a while on what is an acceptable lower limit of the presence of lead in water.
I'm going to just pause for just a second because you've brought up a lot of very interesting subjects, but since you did bring up the subject of the contaminated water, how was it discovered? Who discovered that problem? And you think about water coming in from a municipal source. Yes. How is it not protected from this outside?
I appreciate you asking.
Yes.
As an adult with 13 grandchildren and 2 more on the way, many of which live right here in Watts, I started worrying about, well, if there's lead in the soil in the right-of-ways, and we have these behaviors in the housing developments, is there some connection? So I went and tested the soil in housing developments and found 10 times the amount of lead than what should be there in terms of a naturally occurring substance.
Okay.
And then formed an organization to research and study it further called the Better Watts Initiative. And the Better Watts Initiative is made up of students from 9 different universities, all of which are either master's or PhD scholars. And they come together with the understanding that whatever data they gather belongs to the community, that we're not, nothing about what we're doing is looking for money or looking for credit. We simply want to make the world aware that this problem exists. And so fast forward to this morning and the meeting and the question of what is an acceptable level. The head of LADWP, the head of the Housing Authority for the city of Los Angeles is sitting there saying that 5 parts per billion is acceptable. And I had a picture of an hourglass, a virtual hourglass that I held up, and it was running. And I told them that each grain of sand is 5 parts of lead per billion. There's 1 billion grains of sand in this hourglass. By the time this hourglass is empty, that's how many people have had lead exposure, further exacerbate whatever the symptoms are, whatever the conditions are, for the next 3 generations. That once lead is accumulative, so even if it's 2%, as long as it keeps dripping in to our collective systems, we're suffering the consequences of a heightening accumulation of lead content in our blood. And what lead causes is misfiring synapse. It causes ADD, ADHD. It can be the cause for inexplicable violence and destructive behavior. And when I start talking like that, and you start thinking about a kid that will trade bullets at a birthday party over the color of the cap or where they're from, so to speak, I'm looking at a kid that is inexplicably enraged.
Right. So there are environmental reasons that could actually, sadly,
Yes.
explain this behavior. But do you feel that the contaminant is getting into the pipe?
I don't believe that the municipal water source is the culprit in this. I think the culprit is the operation of nearby General Motors, for instance, and Ford Motor Company from the 40s until the 70s produced high-performance engines for these hulking monsters they called cars, right? And they needed lead gas, leaded fuel. You remember leaded fuel to make those engines run smoothly. It worked perfectly. But out the tailpipe, when we weren't so concerned about environmental stewardship, the lead made its way into the atmosphere. And with the rise of lead in the atmosphere, there was a rise in local and regional crime rates. And it went on for 30 years until the late 70s when the Environmental Protection Agency came into being and lead was outlawed. When lead got outlawed, it was banned. And it began to drop. Its presence in the atmosphere began to drop. Coincidentally, crime rates, they didn't drop, but they leveled off. And it's been pretty, static since, but decreasing over time, not dropping as fast as the lead, but coming down. That lead that dropped, it dropped in the front yards and backyards of whatever was nearest to those cars that were, exhausting that poisonous fume. The point that I'm making is that all of that stuff fell. And it fell at increased rates in underserved communities, in the poorest communities where the cars are not running as well, especially where there's a lot of densification and where there are a lot of nearby highways and byways. Watts is home to a greater convergence of commercial transportation entities than any other community like Watts in California. We're only 2 miles square,
Right, right.
but we've got, I mean, railroad right-of-ways, northeast, south, and west, metro rail, the airport corridors over the north end, and they drop fuel to lessen their weight every day. 105 freeway, the 710, the 110 freeway, and in the corridors like Imperial Highway and Central Avenue that tens, if not hundreds of thousands of cars are traveling by. So I tested along some of those routes, and that's where I found 800, 900, 1,000 more parts per billion of lead in the soil. And a lot of people just don't want to believe that, but 80 parts is the actionable level in the state of California.
Well, you have definitely, brought the issue up, and it's an incredibly critical issue, and you're working really diligently to get the message out and to have this happen, and simultaneously doing so many other great things for the community. I mean, I know that one of the critical components of this wonderful facility is job training and job placement and, education for, particular careers. What is that program, and what are you proud that you've been able to accomplish there?
It's hard to answer because I restructured the organization a few
Okay.
years ago, created 10 divisions so that I can bring more focus in each area. So we've got the job training and development, and in that area we get a lot of people back to work that have been long-term unemployed or hard to employ. In fact, WLCAC itself considers that part of its employment policy, that we care about getting people back to work because we think nothing solves poverty like a job. So we hire locally. 80% of our workforce lives within walking distance. Our construction development, our projects ask to be walk-to-work projects so that we're not constantly importing manpower. Senior services, close to 2,000 meals a day delivered to people, hot and ready to eat, people that can't otherwise get out and get to food the way they would like. Sometimes the only people they actually see in their lives are the people that deliver those services. We've got a family service division that looks at the plight of a family and why it is that they're not thriving. And so, if they haven't done a tax return in years, we'll get their taxes caught up. We'll get them boots for dad if he needs them to go back to work. We'll get mom some help with childcare if that's what she needs, whatever it needs. And we have, in the city of Los Angeles, we have the highest performing family service center in all of the city. We've got a 2.5 acre farm in the middle of what's been declared a food desert. And through that, we give out close to 40,000 pounds of food every month, free of charge. But we also are growing food at that farm. And we're in the process now in pre-development of building a culinary center that can teach people how not only to grow food, but to gather it and prepare it and consume it in a healthier manner than they're currently doing, because most of our dependency on synthetic medication can be solved if we change our eating habits. We have the enrichment division, which does all the things that you've noticed in this building with glass blowing and ceramics firing and sublimation, embroidery, silk screening, movie and music production. All the different things that we do here is because we believe that all the other things we do with homeless services and so on, that only gets to 3/4 of the human being.
Right.
That service side. It's when they can express themselves creatively and constructively that their souls begin to heal and they begin to see each other as contributors to the better side of the community.
Sure. What can people do to help you? I mean, what do you need? You're doing so much and you're tackling a lot of major issues, concerns, and programs. What can people do to help you?
Two things.
Okay.
We have a website that talks about all the things that we do. You can get more information there. It's at www.wlcac.org.
Okay.
There's a donation button there, and I don't know how to say, I'm not asking for donations, but I'll tell you, we've never done a fundraiser in 60 years. And only within the last year or so, we put a donation button on our site because so much of what I described to you, that is city, county, state, federal funded programming, so much of it comes with far less than half of what it needs to actually function properly. So we're going to be forced at some point to do fundraising, but just learn about us, and there are plenty of opportunities. We have a volunteer coordinator. You can call us and we'll get you involved.
Well, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
It's nice to have had this opportunity so that you could realize that it was 25 years.
Thank you.
And keep up the good work, and I hope you let me come back and learn more about how all of this is progressing, because you've done so much, but I can see by what you've told me this afternoon that you're taking another very long road to do a lot more.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Aw, thank you. And that's a wrap on this LA Current.